Okay, so for Unit 1 in 7th grade Language Arts and Literature, we're going to be focusing on fiction and nonfiction. And fiction, you all already know, is writing that is imaginative and designed to entertain. The author creates the events and characters, and all the works of fiction share certain basic elements. And when we usually talk about fiction, we always say it's not true. It's made up, okay? Most of the time they include people or animals, which we call characters. The series of events in the story is called a plot. The time and place in the story is called the setting. The one that tells the story is called a narrator. And then the main idea of the story is called the theme. And we're going to go back over all of these a little bit more in depth in just a few minutes. Okay, now there are different types of fiction. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is called a novel. A novel is book length and it has more plot and characters than a short story. Characters often face a problem in a certain time and place. When you go to the library and you see those books that are pretty thick, those are novels, okay? Then there is what's called a novella. It's fiction that is longer than a short story, but it's shorter than a novel. It's kind of in between. It's not just a couple of pages of a short story, but it's not a big, long, thick book either. And then you have your short story, which is a lot of what we read in class. Short stories are a brief work of fiction, like a novel. It has characters, it has a setting, and it has a plot. But unlike a novel, it has a single conflict, and it's meant to be read in one setting. When you read a novel, normally it'll take you several days to read it. You can't just sit down and read it all at one time. But a short story, you can. You can sit down and read the whole thing all at one time. Now, nonfiction is the opposite of fiction. It's writing only about real people, events, or ideas. So it's true. It is told from the author's point of view, and it has facts, or it talks about ideas, and it may show historical context of the time period, which may include information about the people, the events, and the culture. A lot of nonfiction that we read in here is about things that happened in the past, okay? Now, there's types of nonfiction. There is a biography. A biography is a story told about a person's life, and it's told by someone else. And then an autobiography, or sometimes they call it a memoir, is a person's life story written by that person. So let's think about like Abraham Lincoln. If you read a book about Abraham Lincoln and it was written by somebody else, not Abraham Lincoln, then that would be a biography. But if you read a book about Abraham Lincoln and Abraham Lincoln is the person who wrote that book, then that would be an autobiography. Okay, there are letters. In this unit, we're going to read a letter. That is an impression or a feeling written to a specific person, and it might share information, thoughts, or feelings. In this unit, we're going to read a letter that a young child wrote to their father. Then you have a journal or a diary. This is writing that expresses the author's feelings or their first impressions about a subject. A lot of the times you'll hear girls talking about how they write in their diary. They come home after their day at school and they write in their diary about what happened to them at school that day. Okay? Then we have essays or articles. You'll hear that in your other classes. A lot of the times your teacher will tell you you're going to write an essay. That is where you show your opinion on some basic or current issue. So whoever the author is, they are expressing the way that they feel about something. And then informational text. This is writing that we come across in everyday life, including instructions, like you read a box and tells you a recipe on how to make something. Newspaper articles. On your phone, sometimes you'll read articles on your phone. That's all informational text. Okay, now, the stories that we're going to read from Unit 1 are Papa's Parrot by Cynthia Rylant, An American Childhood by Annie Dillard, Barrio Boy by Ernesto Galarza, The Bonesetter's Daughter by Amy Tan, My Furthest Back Person by Alex Haley, and Main Street by Sinclair Lewis. Some of the literary terms that we're going to cover in this unit are style. Style is the author's way of writing. Some authors like to write in a light-hearted, humorous, funny way. Some authors like to write in a deep, dark, serious, maybe scary kind of way. So that's their style. Then you have a narrative. A narrative is a story that's usually told in chronological order. Well, what is chronological order? Chronological order is when you tell your story in order from beginning to end. You know how sometimes you see movies or read stories and it jumps around in time? Well, the chronological order is not that way. It starts at the beginning and it goes forward in time. A narrator, that's the person who's telling the story. And then a narration is the act of telling that story. And then point of view. Point of view is the position from which the author or the storyteller tells the story. You have first person point of view. This is where the narrator is a character in the story. So he will refer to himself as I, or you'll hear me, or you'll hear we in the story because he's talking about himself. But then you've got third person. That's when the narrator is talking about people other than himself. So in those stories, you'll hear the word he or she or they because he's not talking about himself. He's talking about other people. And then you have mood. Mood is the feeling that the writing creates. Sometimes you read a story and it's a sad story and it just kind of gives you a depressed feeling. Sometimes you read a story and it's funny and happy. So that's the mood. Then we have flashback. Flashback is a look into the past at some point in a story. In a lot of stories that you read, you'll be reading about what's happening now, and then it'll go back in time to something that happened a long time ago. That's called a flashback. And then author's purpose. This is the reason why the author wrote. Some authors write to entertain you. They write to inform you. They write to express opinions. Or sometimes they write to persuade you. Satire. Satire is humorous writing that makes fun of foolishness or evil. We're going to read a story in this unit that is a satire, and the story is making fun of people who live in the country. Okay, so that's a good little story, and I think you guys are really going to like it because we all live in the country and we know what it's like. And then characterization. Characterization is the way that a writer develops characters' qualities and their personality traits. Authors will try to describe a character and give you an idea of what kind of person that character is. Okay, so that's the end of Unit 1.